Please bear with us. I am helping Chair Navarro log in.
Nicole, did you see the email from Eric Altman?
Hi, Commissioner Wong. I just read Eric's email. I'll forward him the link to the Planning Commission meeting.
Thank you.
I apologize for the delay, folks. I know that Chair Navarro is trying to log in still.
Nicole.
Chair Navarro should be appearing shortly. I just.
Okay, can you see me? Hear me? Okay. Sorry about that. The difficulty. Had to restart my computer and stuff. I don't know what's going on. Sorry, I'll try to find my background. Okay, is everyone present? Yes.
You can do a roll call.
Okay, yes, let's go ahead and do a roll call.
Okay, so Commissioner Altman, there he is.
Present.
Commissioner Goff.
Present.
Commissioner Wong.
Present.
Vice Chair Mallory.
I shared my link to Commissioner Altman, so I see you unfortunately have my name next to your face. Sorry for that.
change that. I can fix that problem.
Well, I unfortunately had all sorts of problems with this, from not finding the link to various other things, but I'm here and that's all that counts, right?
Yes. Thank you for your efforts in making it. I'm glad you were able to, and likewise.
Yay.
Okay, so so roll call. I don't have my regular information in front of me, so shall we go ahead and do the Pledge of Allegiance?
Sure, let me
Okay.
share the screen. Hold on just 1 second.
Okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. So we don't have any presentations today. So let's see, so public comment. This time is reserved for members of the public to address the city council, or to address the Planning Commission of American Canyon on items of interest that are not on agenda and are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the city of American Canyon. Am I reading the right thing? Is there, so any public comment?
Actually, Chair Navarro, if you don't mind, I'd like to read some introductory remarks and provide some instructions for public comment.
Sure, okay.
So thank you for joining us for the June 24th, 2021 City of American Canyon Planning Commission meeting. This meeting is being held entirely virtually in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. The format for tonight will be similar to that of an in-person Planning Commission meeting. In addition to the Zoom platform, this meeting is being broadcast on cable TV channel 28, on YouTube, and streamed live on the city's website. You will see members of the Planning Commission on your screen, along with members of city staff. All members of the public will participate in listen-only mode. Public comment is invited for non-agenda items during the public forum section at the beginning of the meeting and on each agenda item. When the item you wish to speak on is called, please follow these steps to make your comment. When the chairman calls a particular item and you wish to speak on that item, click the raise hand button if joining by computer. If joining by phone, dial *9 to raise your hand. When it is your turn, I will announce your name and invite you to speak. You may see a message saying the host would like you to unmute your microphone. If you get this message, please click unmute myself and begin speaking. To unmute yourself by phone, dial *6 and begin speaking. Video will not be turned on, only audio. You have up to 3 minutes to make your comments to the Planning Commission. At the end of your 3 minutes, I will ask you to conclude your comments quickly, and I will mute your audio once you're done. Please only press *9 to raise your hand for the items you will speak on, as all raised hands will be cleared at the end of each item. The agenda for this meeting is available on the city's website. As is standard practice, community members are allowed to comment one time on each agenda item. All votes for tonight's meeting will be taken by roll call, and we ask for your patience and understanding when there are technical difficulties. This concludes my opening remarks.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Jones. All right, with that, just to double check, are there any agenda changes? Director Cooper.
Chair Navarro, we have no agenda changes tonight.
Okay, great.
Chair Navarro, we do have somebody raising their hand for open public comment.
Oh, I see. Okay, let's take their
Actually,
open
two
public
people.
comment.
So Chris James had his hand raised first. Mr. James, I'm asking you to unmute yourself, please.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. This is a small item, and it's supposed to be positive. So many of you know that we have the local dump. And I think it sounds pretty negative. And I want to start a new trend in the city. And I'm reaching out to you because you're all members of our community and that you're out there talking to other people. It's often referred to as either the landfill or the trail or the dump trail. And I want to start a trend calling it the island or the island loop. Things start small and kind of snowball, and this may take generations to kind of stick. But I would hope, I'm hoping that we can kind of start something here. And like next time you're taking your kids or your family for a bike ride or a walk, you can say, let's go around the island instead of the dump. I know it's not technically an island, but there's other technical non-islands around in the nation. I think Long Island is an example, and there's other ones out there. So I'm hoping we can kind of stand a trend here. Maybe we can get Google to update and call it the island. Okay, that's it. Thanks so much.
Okay, thank you.
We
Mr.
have
Lee.
Justin Hamilton Hull.
Okay,
Mr. Hull, please unmute yourself.
Hi, this is Justin. I think this is the last day of Zoom. I enjoy watching the meet in Zoom. I think that when the City Hall opening, I'm thinking that maybe the Zoom can work in the city council chamber, so I can watch on Zoom. Second one is thank you, Brett Cooper sent me email for the house 334 house some more. I don't know what's gonna happen. I still see the sale sign up over.
mhm. Okay,
Hi, Justin. Yeah, the property is still for sale.
Okay.
Mhm.
So there's gonna be like people have to build a house, or we have to wait to see what happens.
It is approved for 4 houses over there. This is on Carolyn and Rio Del Mar.
Okay. Thank you, Mr.
You're
Cooper.
welcome.
okay. Any other public comment, Ms. Jones?
Not at this time, Chair Navarro.
Okay, so let's close public comment and go to the consent calendar. We have one item for the minutes. Has everybody read the minutes? Any changes or suggestions to the minutes? If none, any motion to pass the minutes from May 27th, 2021 Planning Commission meeting?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the May 27th Planning Commission meeting.
Okay. Is there
I'll
a
second.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Goff. Okay, roll call for approving of the minutes.
Yes, Commissioner Altman,
Aye.
Commissioner Gall,
Aye.
Commissioner Wong,
Aye.
Vice Chair Malari,
Aye.
Chair Navarro.
Aye. Okay, so that passes. And I guess we have a kind of summer hiatus of hearings today, no public hearings. So we can go on to business regarding the general plan use workshop for fuel stations, kind of pick up where we left off on May 27th.
Oh, thank you, Chair Navarro and Planning Commission. Just wanted to give you an overview of how the general plan relates to what might become zoning regulations for the permanent ones for the fuel station moratorium that's now in place. And so I have a presentation here. I'll share my screen and kind of walk you through and look forward to having a discussion. I know we haven't had really a substantial discussion about the general plan in recent memory, so kind of have a dual purpose here to kind of ease into the topic and with a specific example here with fuel stations. All right, so hopefully you can see the home screen. Excellent. Glad it works. Okay, so let's go forward. So kind of take a real big picture here. The fuel station moratorium is really driven by concern with climate change. It seems like, suddenly the last few years, climate's getting much hotter, and it's had a lot of really terrible consequences for the environment, the economy, and just people's quality of life, as we've kind of discussed in here. American Canyon has had a long history of policies related to sustainability, and climate change is part of that. I have some listed here. The list actually is much longer than this, but I put some of the more notable ones that kind of focus to planning here and building. So there's really community is one that does support sustainability, and all of you who are all part of that, I'm sure recognize it. What's interesting is when we get into what's causing climate change from greenhouse gas emissions, the largest source in California is transportation. And so literally they have more factories and things, perhaps it's a different number. But here in California, everyone's driving a car. So certainly transportation is the largest source of greenhouse gas emissions. If you take a look here, we have a variety of sources, but the single largest source are passenger vehicles. And there's kind of really the tie-in to fuel stations that sell fossil fuels. Just looking at where we are here at American Canyon, have a map here of existing, proposed, and approved fuel stations. We have 3 that are existing, we're all familiar with. They're the Blue Star, the Chevron, Union 76, and Safeway. We have 2 proposed gas stations. No word at this time if the applicants have withdrawn their applications. They're on hiatus because of the moratorium, but they're still on file with us. They're shown here with the green star, 7-Eleven over there by Walgreens, and Rotten Robbie right across the street there from the Union 76 at Donaldson and Highway 29. And then we have the one that's approved, Circle K, up there at the north part of Broadway at Lombard and Napa Junction Road. A little bit of background on the fuel moratorium. Back in March, not too long ago, the City Council approved a 45-day interim urgency ordinance. These time periods are regulated by state law. If a city is to adopt urgency ordinance, the first one can only be for 45 days. And so it doesn't give much time to do a whole lot. So on April 6th, the City Council approved a second urgency ordinance, and state law allows that one to last for 10 months and 15 days. So a little more breathing room for getting things done. A little background on urgency ordinance. This isn't a topic that we brought to the Planning Commission. It went straight to the council, so this may be new for some of our viewers. It is, as mentioned, authorized by state law, and what it does is the zoning code has a lot of uses, and times change, circumstances arise that maybe not have been contemplated, and so the urgency ordinance law allows you to kind of put a timeout on certain land uses while you study it and maybe come up with new policies. And so the first ordinance, as I mentioned, by state law is 45 days, and that one would have expired on April 16, were it not for the new ordinance that got adopted on April 6. And so that one will last until February 21, unless we have new ordinances that replace it before that time. But it will expire if nothing new happens on February 22nd next year. There is an opportunity for a third extension for 12 months, and that's always a possibility if more time is needed. Because it's an urgency ordinance and it takes effect immediately, normally an ordinance has 2 readings and then effective 30 days later. So by having something instantly, it takes a 4/5 supermajority of the council to approve it. And as it mentioned in state law, some of the purposes is to take a look at your general plan and your municipal code, of which the zoning code is a part of that. The general plan, every California jurisdiction is required to have a general plan. And there are a variety of elements in there, each with a different topic. And so they have a different emphasis, but there's a lot of overlap. And so some policies might be in 2 different elements, or they can cross-reference one another. There are no elements that take precedence over another. The land use is really the element where a lot of the policies reside, because the general plan is all about the physical configuration of the city over the long term. And so there are other topics, but the land use tends to be one where a lot of policies fit. But legally, all of the elements have equal weight. So the zoning code must be consistent with the general plan. So the zoning is considered an implementation of the general plan. And so if the zoning code is going to be requiring something, you have to draw on policies in the general plan. Otherwise, if it's not there, it lacks a basis, legal basis for approval. So we have to be very careful when we amend our zoning code to make sure we reflect back into the general plan. You might see in some of the staff reports where we have general plan policies that support the project, or when we have an ordinance change. In this case, as I show in blue text, there are no policies right now in the general plan that discuss greenhouse gas emissions. And you may be wondering, well, we've been talking about them for a while. It is required per state law. So you'll see it as a component of our environmental review, but the authority for that comes from state law. If the city is going to be adopting its own standalone, individual, unique policies on greenhouse gas emissions, we have to look to the general plan. Now, the general plan can also reference state law, but there has to be this line of sight with the general plan when we're working on a new ordinance. And so, since the general plan really doesn't have any policies about greenhouse gas emissions, if the city were to adopt a new permanent ordinance on fuel stations, with the idea of helping to mitigate and reduce climate change and adaptation, then we need to have policies in the general plan. The general plan has some very distinctive components, kind of leading you to sort of the really big picture and then down to a very specific level. And so I've kind of numbered them. There's no sort of rule about this, but this is generally how ours is configured, and many other general plans as well. And the very, very high level concept would be the opportunities and constraints. And so that's taking the land use element specifically. Each of the elements has this part, but the land use has this very broad, big picture look at the city about what is our opportunities and what are some of the challenges that we have. At this time, there are no challenges talking about greenhouse gas emissions and climate adaptation. The next level down there, we get a little more specific, gets down into goals in a very general way, expression of community values, kind of abstract, but kind of this is where we're, this is what we want to do. It's sort of your first response to how to address opportunities and constraints. And then we get down to an objective, which is a little more specific, kind of intermediate step. It's possible, measurable towards obtaining our goals. And then policies kind of really get down to a higher degree of specificity. These are commitments that the city would do to help address these opportunities and constraints. And then when you do them, so one might be to amend an ordinance, then the implementation is the ordinance or a program or a fee. There's a variety of things that can be done to implement a policy, but the policies get pretty much down to this is kind of your shopping list of things that you'll get done. Are you with me so far? Making sense, hopefully? A little geeky, I understand.
Yes, that's good.
Okay, So getting into where do we go back again to the fuel station. And when we look at staff's role in administering kind of the overall planning and building, the policy, we are the administrators, we're not the policy makers. It's a really interesting distinction that I think is always worthwhile talking about. Hopefully, staff has sufficient knowledge of the community, the sensibilities of the people that live here, our existing ordinances, things going on. And so hopefully when you kind of take all that together, when something needs to be addressed, you know, we can kind of like, hey, I think something needs to be done here. And that would be the case where we'd raise something to the Planning Commission and say, what do you think? And that's kind of what we're doing here with the fuel station general plan amendments. And that was kind of the Planning Commission that raised the issue also as policymakers about fuel stations. So we all kind of play a role here. And so, but what staff's role is if, you know, if we have a hunch something needs to be talked about, then that would be something we'd bring forward to see, check in and see what do you think before we go forward. In the case of these policies, they are all drawn from existing policies that have been vetted through our community in one form or the other. So if it were a brand new policy and maybe staff thinks it's a good idea, we could do that too. But fortunately, we have a nice library of existing policies, you know, from some of those things that we've already done in the past to draw on. So we're not really inventing something new here. So getting maybe a little more into the weeds, as we look at if the opportunities and constraints in the land use element have no mention of greenhouse gas emissions of being a concern, here is some wording also in the staff report that talks about a potential description of, I would guess perhaps a constraint in the form of climate change impacts affecting our community. And so this would kind of be the big picture explanation of a concern that is expressed in the land use element about the impacts of climate change as something that's a constraint and the subsequent policies in the land use element would address in some form or fashion. So this is kind of a workshop. If you wanted to discuss this, or I could just kind of run through the rest and we can come back to it later if you like. Happy whatever you'd like. But
Yeah, continue and then we can.
yeah, okay. That way we don't maybe lose some continuity and we can come back.
Yeah.
But this is with the highest level sort of, hey, by the way, climate change.
Yeah.
All right. The next level would get into a goal, and American Canyon is a high achieving place. And so the goal would be to conduct decisive near-term action. And this is drawn from our climate change proclamation that the City Council adopted, oh my gosh, almost two years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, I don't know if anyone would disagree with decisive near-term action.
Mm-hmm.
But that would be kind of the goal here is
Mm-hmm.
action.
Okay.
And then an objective, which was found in our urgency ordinance, would be just look at initiatives to reduce indirect and direct greenhouse gas emissions, transportation sources, and new development in the city. As a land use element, its really kind of focus is on physical development of the city. And so thought this might be a good objective for the land use element. And it would also speak to the issue of the fuel station land uses. Obviously, there are a host of other things that can be done and will be done in aid of greenhouse gas emission reduction and climate change. And the city is a part of the Napa County-wide Climate Action Committee, and a component of the general plan update includes a climate action plan. So maybe to put this into context, there are a lot more policies and objectives that can be added to the general plan and will be through additional efforts. But in terms of being able to navigate a new ordinance for fuel stations and working with the general plan to get there, these are more focused on sort of land use sources of greenhouse gas emissions. So that's kind of why that one's written the way it is.
Mhm.
Let's see. Oh, okay. So I have several policies, and this one is also from the Climate Change Proclamation, and this isn't necessarily geared to fuel stations specifically, but it is possible that through working through the Napa Climate Action Committee, that there could be, ideas and policies and things that relate to that or others. It seemed like I'll call low-hanging fruit to add in here, because it is an active, ongoing effort the city's involved with.
Mhm.
And I think it's always good to be able to support efforts, expanding and educating action in a more comprehensive manner. And then this one is more specific to fuel stations. It really acknowledges the fact that transportation is the single largest greenhouse gas source in California and also American Canyon. And so it's getting into prohibiting construction of new fossil fuel stations, kind of linking the two. And that also was described in our urgency ordinance. So the other part too, that may be on the more positive side, as opposed to no, would be the solution is expanding the availability of public and private electric vehicle charging stations throughout California. And that's in our urgency ordinance, but it's also as part of the research that is included in the urgency ordinance. Caltrans and other organizations of authority on this topic have clearly said that this is really the way in which to make it easier to own an electric vehicle. Uses electricity. Electricity is a much cleaner fuel source, and so the path to doing that is making it easy for folks to be able to get their fuel. And so there's a lot of ways in which fuel stations could occur. So this would give you the policy authority to really get in there and provide some efforts. Also, to a nod to our Broadway District Plan, it really was intended and is intended to be part of the sustainable community strategy for the Bay Area and American Canyon by having compact urban form. So if we can just avoid vehicle trips altogether, well then that itself reduces the amount of greenhouse gas emissions. And so the idea of reducing vehicle miles traveled by encouraging smart growth and compact urban form is a way to help reduce vehicle miles traveled. So I might also add in here in terms of the source would also be the urgency ordinance, because I think it was argued that in the Broadway district where gas stations are currently allowed by ordinance, that may not be the right land use if you're trying to encourage a place where walking is important and access to housing and services. Where does gas stations fit in all that? May not be the right way. So I think there's also a connection there as well. Another one too, not so much fuel station specifically, but we do have a requirement in the Broadway district for a 15% or greater fuel efficiency, energy efficiency, pardon me, for new buildings. And that is specific to the Broadway district, but there are jurisdictions and places in California that are adopting a building code that required. And those are referred to reach codes, where standard is here and you're kind of reaching higher to achieve a better standard. You know, if it's working okay in one area of the city, arguably, what would be the reason it couldn't work elsewhere? So that is something too that could be, it says consider. So it's not necessarily you will do, but it does enable the city to really think about that, and kind of, as part of the general plan, kind of raises awareness over a possibility of something that the city might achieve through the building code, which would be an implementation measure. So those are kind of the range of policies. I have worked with the city attorney and we've kind of reviewed them. I'm sure there is much, much more one could say in the issue of policies geared towards fuel stations. Back in all of our minds, of course, is how quickly can we get this done? We want to be comprehensive and legal and thorough, but maybe not necessarily exhaustive. Because I know that people want to get something done. So
Right.
if anybody feels that there's something that may be amended, that has been talked about, or a good idea to add, you know, we can do all that. But I wanted to kind of present something, but in case you're wondering, you know, do we need to be exhaustive in order to achieve our goal to have an implementation ordinance? The answer is no, but it does have to be comprehensive enough to accomplish the two. And it also, too, I think needs to also reflect what the community wants, that we can reasonably add. Knowing that we are about to, you know, we're in the process of updating our general plan, and we can do a much more exhaustive or thorough review of all the range of possibilities through that process as well. So kind of with that, I wanted to kind of turn it back over to you. Following our workshop, what I'm likely to do is package this into a general plan amendment and then bring it back to you at your next meeting for a hearing, and then forward that on to the city council and kind of take it from there. Once we have a general plan amendment updated, then we can begin a process of implementing with a zoning code amendment. So there's several steps to go. This is kind of just the beginning, but we want to make sure we do it right and methodically.
Okay.
So glad to answer any questions you have.
Okay. Let me just double check on public comment. Is there anyone with their hands up or wanting to make a public comment? Mr.
We do have somebody who has his hand raised.
Okay.
So,
So let's go ahead
Bayard?
and open
I'm
up public comment.
okay. So Bayard, I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself.
I'm here.
Okay.
So I had something entirely different written, but Brent Cooper, I want to commend you for a very thorough presentation. And I also want to acknowledge that the Planning Commission spends an incredible amount of time, along with staff, researching all of this stuff. I know all of you are reading and trying to inform yourselves on this subject and many others. But on to this moratorium. We certainly hope that this can be part of not only the general plan, but that you can enjoin the city council to ensure that a full vote would make this law, and then you can implement it and you don't have to keep on working around it to find temporary fixes for this. And I know that you are a regulatory entity that is trying to implement, and that they may have to actually write the law. But as we've seen, is that your actions and staff actions actually implemented these short-term, at least, moratoriums through February. So again, congratulations to you. I'd also like to add that if you can follow through with this and put more teeth to it, you're going to set a precedent for the other municipalities and for the county. The CAC was developed based on a collective effort from all the municipalities, and it would never have happened with the county if we hadn't gotten everybody on board in each of the cities. So if we can set that precedent for the other municipalities and the county, why not the state? And let's be optimistic and say, maybe we can get the entire country on board with these things. As a little side note, you're talking about the building code and the REACH code. Something somewhat related to these gas stations is that if any amount of car idling is not good for the environment, and any drive-through window that is approved moving forward is exactly that, idling cars. Idling cars accounts for over 15% of our national pollution emissions. And as Brent said, approximately 70% of the county, it's all vehicular transportation. So if there are ways that we can address allowing for or not allowing for another drive-through window, that would be fantastic. Also, if you want us to participate at Napa Climate Now, I should have said that earlier, sorry. I'm a member of Napa Climate Now, and which is an affiliate of 350.org. And if we can participate in the public input, we would be delighted to do so. And that's it.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Jones, any other?
We have Chris James.
Okay,
Mr. James, please unmute yourself.
Hi, I've spoken a few times on this before, but I just wanted to kind of circle back around. I wanted to thank Brent, the staff and planning commissioners for taking such a bold step here and working so diligently on this. I also wanted to echo a lot of things that have been said without actually saying them, I guess. The prior caller and everyone else who's actually rang in over the last couple of meetings, including many students who are, are ultimately going to be our future and actually going to be living with our decisions here. And they spoke very strongly on our progress and actions that are going to happen here or potentially happen here. So again, your actions today and in prior meetings are very commendable. I'm very proud of our city taking a lead in Napa Valley and beyond. So again, thank you very much for participating today in this. And that's it.
okay. Thank you, Mr. James. Is there any other public comment, Ms. Jones?
Nobody has their hand raised. We do have several people in attendance, so I just want to state that this is the time to raise your hand if you would like to speak. Nobody is raising their hand at this point.
Okay, with that, then we will close public comment and open the floor to questions of Director Cooper from the commissioners. Commissioner Altman.
Thank you. I guess I'm going to put it this way. I will start by saying that I'm supportive of the idea of doing something, regarding greenhouse gas emissions, fuel stations, etc. I guess what has me, and where my question has me a little puzzled, is the whole timeline and timing issues. We're in the early phases of doing a general plan update. And we've just heard Director Cooper advise that, we can kind of go further with the general plan update if we do something now. And I get that, but I'm also wondering kind of what's the timeline on getting that done? And if City Council has the ability to extend from February of 22 for another year, taking us to February of 23, does it make sense to do something now or just keep the emergency ordinances in place and do one go round, get the general plan update right to include all of the changes that we want to consider? So that's my initial question. I do have a entirely separate one as well, but let me let that one go for now.
Okay. Commissioner Alden, if I could comment on why work on something for emergency ordinance with a permanent ordinance in place of it now versus after the general plan. During the urgency ordinance hearings, the City Council really directed that they would like to see the new permanent ordinance sooner than later. Kind of the idea being, we have some momentum, everyone's sort of in agreement, at least it was certainly at that time. So let's just get it done. So part of what we're doing with the general plan is ensuring that we insert a sufficient level of policy to give us the authorization to write a fuel station ordinance for the zoning code. And so if it were to wait, well, the general plan is a very big effort. Sometimes these things get lost or get delayed. The direction was let's kind of use the momentum to sort of get something done sooner than later.
So what's the ultimate timeline for the general plan update at this point? Is it prior to February of 23?
It is right now. We do continue to have fiscal austerity, and there's always intervening issues that can slow things or take us away from focus. So, we want to keep the general plan moving and going forward, but this is something that's more discrete and could be responded to, answered off, and then we can direct our attention on other things that come up.
Okay. Then my other question is, there was a item in the presentation about sort of encouraging electric vehicle charging stations. Again, supportive of that notion and all. I'm just wondering why no comment about fuel cell and hydrogen stations, which some have indicated are actually an even better way to go. And that may be the long term, with electric being sort of that more intermediate term solution, with fuel cell technology being the long-term goal. It's already out there, not very successful, in part because there aren't fuel cell stations. So is that something that we would want to consider adding in terms of the encouragement factor?
Perhaps we could augment some of the one of the policies here where it talks about with the consider feasible methods to expand availability of public and private electric vehicle charging stations. Maybe we could comma fuel cell and hydrogen, maybe, and then perhaps and other
Exactly. Putting in more
um,
catch-all might make some sense.
other non-fossil fuel. We'll get another hearing on this so we can further, refine it. But getting the main points together, I think, is a good thing. Sources, right? Because they're all kind of that ilk, I'd say. Does that seem reasonable? Because then that was really kind of the point too of the workshop, is to kind of air out some of the issues that are on your minds too.
Mm-hmm. Is that it, Commissioner Altman? For you
For the
right
moment,
now?
yep.
For now?
Yep.
Okay. Okay. Anyone who would like to comment next or ask questions next? Okay. Seeing none, I will ask. One thing is, there's I can't cite on the Broadway specific district plan, but what about congestion in terms, especially piggybacking off of electric vehicles or hydrogen source vehicle charging and fuel, or energizing of vehicles? There is still an issue of congestion and traffic, right? So if we had, let's say, instead of the two pending requests for gas stations or fossil fuel stations, if they were EV stations, it still would be a kind of encouragement of more vehicles, traffic, congestion pulling off and onto Highway 29.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just wondering how that part of the impact of having stations where, moving vehicles, whether they're causing pollution or not, do increase, traffic congestion and make it more difficult for pedestrian and non-motorized vehicles like bike.
Yeah, Chair Navarro, we do have policies that speak to some of those issues. The Broadway Plan, for one, talks about reducing the driveway cuts onto Highway 29 and trying to consolidate site access to help with congestion. Avoiding trips altogether with compact urban form is another way.
The vehicle miles traveled.
Pardon me?
And the vehicle miles traveled.
Yes. Yeah, the vehicle miles traveled is another one. The Napa Valley Transportation Authority also is working on an implementation plan for Highway 29 with, and recently adopted a plan, encouraging greater transit use and measures like that to make it easier to be able to take transit and avoid using a car. And so we do have a lot of policies. Congestion, I think, admittedly, is a tough one to wrestle.
Right.
But we do have a number of policies, fortunately, in place today to help us with that.
I'm just kind of envisioning that somehow the alternative or non-fossil fueled vehicles also connect somehow to congestion, not just that, okay, instead of at the 76 station, we put electric vehicle station. I'd say that doesn't change much, especially on congestion. Certainly saves on pollution. But somewhere within the implementation of the electric vehicles, that they're kind of integrated with kind of helping for greater pedestrian right-of-way, or helping for economic vitality, like being in shopping centers near retail so people can charge and go and shop. Something that kind of connects that, I guess. So it's not like we're just gonna, right now people pull off the road and go get gassed up. And then we're saying, okay, well, that's causing pollution, but if they go and they get energized with electricity, it's still, it doesn't do pollution, but it still contributes to the congestion and pulling on and off of the main highway.
Well, we do have policies about congestion in the general plan and implementation. We lack policies about greenhouse gas emissions. And so that was kind of why the focus of this general plan amendment is to insert policies about greenhouse gas emissions into the general plan. Ultimately, when the ordinance is written, we could perhaps draw on congestion policies that are there, but to the extent that greenhouse gas emission reduction is a goal from the ordinance, it would need to have policies in the general plan in order for that purpose to be highlighted as a value.
Okay, yeah. All right, that's okay. That's just my stuff. Anyone else have any comments?
Yeah, Tyrone, I have my hand up.
Okay. Oh, I see. Okay, sorry.
That's all right.
Commissioner Goff.
So first off, thank you, Brent, for the rundown. It was very good to organize all my thoughts, especially around the different components of the general plan and how we have to address kind of each level of the general plan to put something in place. My understanding is, the really goal here is to put the information into the plan so we can get through with the restrictions on gas stations. And then everything else related to this is kind of going to be built into the revision of the general plan, hopefully, that is taking place overall. But our scope right here is really focused on the land use element and in what we're allowing or zoned or being able to be built in our city. And I understand all that, and that's great. I guess my big thing is I'm hoping that when they look at those elements, when they're redoing the general plan, they look at a variety of different things besides what we're just tackling right here.
Right.
Now, from what you presented to me, I guess the only thing I really had a couple of questions about, one of them is just kind of terminology. You used fossil fuel. It was about fossil fuel and gas stations. Well, I hate to tell you, but most of our electricity is still generated through fossil fuel. Not all of it. It's gotten better and better. I think we're at 52% now in renewable energy, but the state itself, it's still almost half of our electricity is still being generated through fossil fuel. So I'm a little bit of a misnomer there when you talk about fossil fuel. So that's one of my concerns. And the other one is, I think there's a real opportunity here, and it touches a little bit on what Eric was doing or mentioning, or Commissioner Altman. I think we have an opportunity here to change some of our policies around new buildings and having charging stations required. I mean, if we're going to get to electrical vehicles or alternative vehicles, number one is at my house level. If I have a charging station in my house, more than likely I'm going to look for an electric vehicle. If I don't have a charging station on that, then I'm going to incur some additional, cost to me for my electric vehicle. So, the state has passed some things around, prepping for solar. It's not required solar be in there, but new buildings are required to be prepped for solar. I think something along those same lines around charging stations and individual homes. And then also for all new commercial that is being built within the city, along with the parking elements, some requirements around number of charging stations that are required. We talked about this a little bit with the last apartment complex that came through, and we're looking at the solar and charging stations. I think if we added something along the requirement of charging stations, per se, a number of parking spaces and commercial uses would be a good thing to do. And then my final thing was related to public comment and the idling. 15% of our emissions are coming from idling. I believe that's the number he threw out there. And I'm not sure if that's valid or not. I haven't done my research on that, but that's a significant amount. And to me, that goes to, do we promote drive-through within our city, or ways to reduce idling in our city? And part of that is traffic. We don't have a whole bunch of control on stoplights and things like that, which incur idling. But any type of drive-through restaurant, any type of drive-through commerce, that encourages idling. So I think that is something else that maybe we need to look at inside some of the work that's going on in the general plan.
Thank you very much. The one policy, draft policy, discussing expanding feasible methods to provide availability of public and private electric vehicle charging stations would naturally fit into some of the ideas that you had. Idling is a good one. I think I will contact the first speaker to see what research they can provide about the impacts of idling as a basis to have a policy to just add there, finding ways to reduce vehicle idling.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Chair Navarro, Commissioner Wong has her hand
Oh,
raised.
yes, I'm sorry. I was pondering a question. Okay, yes, Commissioner Wong, please go ahead.
Thank you. Brent, I want to thank you for another thorough presentation. It had a lot of great information about the general plan process, which I think you're right. This is probably the first time that we're touching upon it, and I look forward to more discussions. I thought it was interesting about, this is a very timely topic. I think we had only just come out of the COVID orange tier, and then all of a sudden, there's a wildfire nearby, and our own air quality indicator, we were in the orange tier for air quality. So definitely the climate crisis is here, and this is a very timely topic. And I don't know if it's possible, but I would like to see air quality included as one of the impacts of the climate crisis. And I'd also, as far as like policy changes and whatnot, I don't know if this is within the scope of what we can do, but I know the city has various policies or permits for homeowners that want to retrofit their house to add solar or to add an EV charging station. And because both of those are great alternative energy sources, is there a way that we can streamline that process and or subsidize the fees for those to encourage more homeowners to do that? Because again, that's less fossil fuel, which is better for the environment. So if that's something that can be considered. And I did meet with Patrick Band from the Bicycle Coalition. He reached out to me a couple months ago, and his conversation has been weighing on my mind as well. And I know one of the goals that his group does is they want people to bicycle more. And I think with a city our size, we're 5 or 6 miles, and we're mostly fairly flat, especially, like where all the shopping areas are. So it would be great if we can, as Councilmember Oro said at the last council meeting, be more multimodal. Let's see what we can do about more resources for bicycling, safe bicycle paths, secure bicycle parking. I think that would go a long ways towards, in a different manner, accomplishing the same goal of what we're talking about here, is addressing, the climate change issues that we're seeing. And as to how we got to this point to have this discussion, I want to take a step back and acknowledge actually that there has, at this point, I know we've had a few public comments here during this meeting, but prior to this meeting, there have been several city meetings, and we've had huge input from the community about it. And there have been actually several large discussions on Nextdoor as well from residents. We know this is a big topic within the community, and I'm glad to see it brought forward. And I'm glad that we're carrying forward with the momentum that the residents want to see on this, and that it's not just, something that we're kind of just sitting and discussing that we're making forward progress. And I just sort of realized today that it was only because of the COVID restrictions that our city meetings that we allowed public participation via the phone and via Zoom. Prior to that, they were all in-person meetings. So I really hope that those options continue, because I think that is part of the impetus that has brought us here to this point with the level of public input we've had. And I want to call out our student leaders for being part of that. They go to school during, Monday through Friday. And for them, some of our meetings starting at 6:30, they run a few hours. They did not have the option probably to come and sit, in the meetings while they're in school. Yet when they're online, they may have been able to multitask and also participate at the same time. So in that sense, I think it was perfect that they were able to speak up, because this climate crisis is what we're leaving to them to manage. So I think it was very opportune that we gave them the opportunity to speak up at this time. And I hope the city continues to offer those options as we, resume more of a normal life. And I want to thank our student leaders for participating with us, and all the members of the community who got us to this point. And perhaps another point to consider as well when we talk about fossil fuels and what we want to encourage. And this is not necessarily for our ordinance, but just for the city. Maybe we should encourage our own maintenance crews not to use gas-powered equipment. Thank you.
Okay.
I could just jump on Commissioner Wong there. I would always also encourage not just our crews, anybody the city contracts out with, limiting the use of gas-powered utensils or tools for their jobs if at all possible.
Yeah, I echo that. And as you mentioned, Commissioner Wong, just the thought of having a lot of public participation, the fact of having workshops, maybe changing the platform and how we do that, or having alternative, one workshop we won't tackle everything, right? Even right now in this platform here, we're mentioning good amount of detail and good amount of input just from our own opinions and what we feel, as far as climate change. What I'm interested in is just really trying to encourage, our community as well to really participate in getting involved and helping us really drive, the general plan home, and really getting it down to what we want American Canyon to be for the future for our children and so forth. I'm interested in getting back into City Hall. I'd like to be in person. I'd like to get more interaction, but maybe it takes a couple of workshops, even on weekends or other evenings, not just on planned days here, to tackle different different working families and schedules, just to accommodate that, since it is it's a big issue for all of us here.
Okay. Commissioner Altman?
Yeah, if I can actually piggyback on Vice Chair Malari's comments, I think she's spot on in terms of taking steps to encourage more public involvement. While I certainly appreciate the comments we've received to date, I will tell you I'm a little disappointed that at this meeting, which is where we're actually going to be taking action, there were a whopping 2 public comments. And that the number of participants, and I haven't checked it in a bit, but we don't have a large group focused on this, and I know that this has been posted on Nextdoor by none other than our very own Commissioner Wong, and very, very well and expertly with lots of information. So it's not as if this isn't something that the public knows about. But I think that one of the things that we always need to strive to do is to increase that public participation piece. So any ideas, and I think, I heard earlier the notion of continuing to use Zoom even once we're back in person, so that people can access either coming in person if they choose to, watching it on the TV broadcast, or watching it on and participating via Zoom or some other similar, type channel. I think that stuff is great and should be, strongly encouraged. I hope that's something that the city council will take up doing. If they've got the authority, and I'm not sure that they do, in terms of structuring the, regulations so that those are permissible options going forward, or if that's a state requirement. But, I think those are very valuable. And then, coming back to the issue at hand in terms of the emergency ordinance regarding fuel stations, I again agree with, all the comments that have been made regarding the other things that we need to be looking at with it. I'll say, I get the idling, and we have one very, very easy spot to reduce some of the idling issues that I've brought up in the past, and there's never been any action taken on it. And that is the left turn signal from 29 North onto West American Canyon Road. The turn lane there is very small. If the folks at Caltrans would just remove that curb, you've got that wide median. I don't care if they don't pave the median. Any vehicle can drive over that dry, grass and dirt to queue up for that turn. There are numerous times where I've been looking to make that turn. I'm sure this has happened to others. And the light turns and you're too far back. You can't get into that turn lane. And by the time you get to be able to move over, every car who's making the turn is turned. You're the first person in the turn lane, stopped at the red light. Where had that turn lane been longer, you'd have been able to go, and you wouldn't have been sitting there idling for the additional however long that whole light cycle is to cycle back. And it's a very simple, easy thing that I would love to see the city push Caltrans to just go in and remove that curb. Don't even paint an extra line. I mean, do it on the cheap. Just remove the curb, and you will help all of us immensely. So that's sort of my comments. I mean, I think everybody knows I'm all for solar. So the more we do on that front, I think that Commissioner Goff's comments regarding vehicle chargers and so on are also really valuable. And all of these things to advance helping our environment and reducing our reliance on petroleum products is very beneficial. But Commissioner Goff is also right that when you talk fossil fuel and we're talking electricity, well, electricity itself isn't fossil fuel, but the way we generate most of our electricity is in fact still, or if not most, a significant portion is still via use of fossil fuels, whether it be coal or oil, natural gas, etc. Those fuel a significant number of our power generation in California. And in California, we're better than most other states. So you can imagine how bad it is elsewhere in the U.S.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Commissioner Wong, you have your hand up?
Thank you. I wanted to respond to Commissioner Altman's comment about public input, and he touched upon he had hoped to see more public input at this meeting. I just want to mention that this meeting is a continuation, that this topic was started at the end of the last meeting, and I think we reached it very late. And so we did have quite a few public comments spoken at the last meeting, and then we closed the session. I mean, it was because I think we ran so late, yet we wanted to hear the people who had waited so long for us. And I do want to also put out there, when the council passed the first emergency ordinance, I believe it was back in February. I don't know if you participated in that council meeting or if you listened to it, but I watched it live and I was floored by the number of residents that attended and participated and spoke up wanting that moratorium. Aside from the development projects that we've had before us, where we do get a large turnout, and I suspect a large number of them are people directly involved in the business side of it who voice their support of the project, which is fine. But aside from that, when the city council discussed the moratorium, that was one of the largest meetings I have seen with resident input, people that I knew were residents, neighbors, whatnot. Of course, I think that record was blown away by the last city council meeting when they discussed the West Side Connector. But that was a topic where I think the community turned out in force and they spoke their mind. And they've also given us public comments at some of our earlier meetings as well. And personally, I don't expect the average citizen to really understand the process of how topics work and how they bounce around from different meetings. So in a sense, I almost feel if they've expressed their opinion once and it's really still the same topic, we should take the leniency and consider that as the same guidance again, because I think it's asking a lot for them to keep showing up again every time we discuss the gas station topic to repeat their sentiment. I'm happy just to have them express it once, writing or verbally, and their comments are captured in the public record. And we can always go back and listen to it again, which is what I did last time. In preparation for the last meeting, I went back and listened to our joint session with council to hear what council said and what the public comments said. So I believe that input is out there for us.
Okay, thank you. Good input. Is there anyone else with any comments on this item? Okay. So Director Cooper, is there anything else you wanted to cover on this item?
Thank you, Chair Navarro. No, that's pretty much it. I think we have some great feedback. Let me just review some of the notes that I took. Adding in to one of the policies when we're talking about expanding opportunities, in addition to charging stations, talking about other fuel cell and hydrogen and other non-fossil fuel sources. Might fit in that one there.
Mm-hmm.
Looking ahead to the ordinance itself and requirements for charging stations in new construction, residential and commercial. Perhaps some research on the impacts of idling and air quality, and possibly a policy, if there is justification through research, demonstrate that this could be an area of focus that could help reduce greenhouse gas emissions. We could add a policy about looking at efforts to reduce idling in American Canyon. Back again to implementation, looking at opportunities to help homeowners pay for the costs for solar installations. Also looking at our multimodal policies. I know we have a very good bicycle and pedestrian plan. It's the money part that's hard. But one new area that Patrick Van did mention to me that could be updated in our ordinance is bicycle parking. And so that's
Mhm.
certainly something that we can take a look at in augmenting our implementation. Back again.
If I can jump in, if you don't mind, on bicycle parking, I think one of the key pieces is secured bicycle parking, potentially covered in certain circumstances and so on. But putting a basic bike rack out just doesn't cut it in this era. Not if we want to be serious about having people truly use their bikes. So I'd clarify that.
Okay. Very good. Yeah. That's great. Thank you for the input. And then let's see. I think I'm not sure if I mentioned implementation with contractors using electrical equipment out in the field, as well as staff and maintenance. And I think also we're always looking at, back again, I think the point's always well taken. How's the best way of reaching out to the community and getting input? I know it is difficult for people to be able to break from their lives and having more opportunities and platforms, times, and such is always a good thing to be able to get feedback. We're definitely looking at that. Did I miss anything? Is there anything else that maybe occurred to somebody, or did I miss something that was important that I can add to the notes?
Commissioner Wong?
Hi, Brent. You may have written it down and you just didn't recap it, but are you able to add air quality in as one of the impacts?
Oh, I did make a note of that. I'll make a bigger letter note.
I figured you had it.
Very good point.
Thank you.
Sorry for missing that.
Okay, so if there's no other questions or comments, I guess just to double check, any other public comment or hands raised from the public, Ms. Jones?
We don't currently, however, we do have people who haven't spoken. If you would like to comment on this item, please raise your hand now. And nobody is raising their hand.
Okay, all right, so can close this item and move on to management and staff oral reports, the active planning projects.
You know, Mr. Ross is waving. Is he waving at us?
Say something.
Oh, okay, please.
I think Brent set the framework, very well, about a well-supported system of regulation that implements the intent of the interim ordinance and the moratorium. I'd just like to make the point on several of the issues raised that a lot of them are based on what's known as the general welfare standard, to preserve the public health and safety. That actually comes from the state constitution. And notwithstanding the general plan consistency issue, some of these areas that have been advanced, can be explored under the guise of the general welfare standard. On a lot of them, I don't think there's a dispute as to efforts to preserve the health, safety, and welfare. So I just make that point.
Okay. All right. So Director Cooper, we want to go ahead with
Sure.
the active planning projects?
Let's see, let me give you an update. Let's see, new project submittals. We have a new subdivision in Watson Ranch, affectionately called Lot 10.
Okay.
This would be for 219 single-family homes. This subdivision would be directly north of the Ruins and Gardens. So if anyone would like to have a home, Ruins and Gardens adjacent, this would be your place. Anyway, that's was submitted on June 4th. We committed to having comments before July 2nd. The builder is DR Horton. They also, I understand, are developing the other subdivision that was approved about 6 months ago, lots 14 and 15 to the southwest of the ruins. So we'll be seeing some new construction out there. Let's see. I do have an update on the list. When it was printed, it was, I think, an hour before the end of the workday. We did receive at the end, a few minutes before closing on the last day of the appeal period, an appeal for the denial of the taco truck over by Larry's Truck Toppers. So that will be heard by the city council at a later meeting. Still working on which might be the right date for that, but that's a correction to your update list here. Let's see, we had a nice meeting with PG&E on their regional center over at the Napa Logistics Park. This is way up at the north part of town in the western edge, just south of the airport. So most people aren't probably going to see it a lot of the way. That being said, the original plans didn't have any landscaping around the perimeter, and the zoning regulations call for robust landscaping and attractive. And then it's something that it doesn't matter what it is in American Canyon. We want everything, no matter what it is, to be the best it can be. And so we had a good meeting with the applicants, and I think they heard us. Is there a question from Commissioner Wong?
Yeah, are they gonna have solar on their building?
They are. I mean, it's going to be coming to the Planning Commission at some point. Unlike most of us in the developed community that needs PG&E to do something, they want an expedite. So we're doing that. So hopefully we'll be able to get a quid pro quo in that regard for our development community. But then nevertheless, it is going to be the nicest regional center in the world, because we're going to make sure it is.
Okay.
And I think we had a very good meeting, so looking forward to bringing that to the Planning Commission, and then you can judge for yourself. The Lemos Point Apartments, they're getting ready to file their building permits. They too have an aggressive construction schedule, and we're working with them to iron that out. So we're hoping that they'll be able to be in a position to begin construction towards the end of the calendar year, maybe beginning early next year. Still ironing that out, but they have an aggressive schedule. We're working with them on that. Let's see. I know the the Giovanoni Logistics Park is a big project, and they're working away on their environmental impact report, administrative draft, and a number of technical issues. So we've had a little time since our comments to them, but they're working very hard on that. So it's a big project, roughly equal in size to the Napa Logistics Park, which, if you remember, that's a big one too.
Mhm.
We're looking forward to our upcoming meeting between the Planning Commission and Council on July 27. At that meeting, we're planning to discuss the Hampton Inn Hotel. We have their marketing study, and we've had a couple of comments returned to us from the applicant on some of the issues on connectivity, architecture, and the like. And so we'll have an update for everybody on that. So I think that'll be a good discussion. The Oat Hill General Plan, Zone Change, Design Permit, etc. That went to the Airport Land Use Commission yesterday. Anytime there is a project that requires a general plan amendment or a zone change, there is a potential for an Airport Land Use Commission review. And so this project, as we pointed out at your hearing way back in March, there are 51 apartment units, condominiums in the airport D zone. And so on the basis of that, there is a policy in the airport plan that says you can't have houses in the D zone. And so the commission made a determination that the project is not compatible with the Airport Land Use Commission. I'll just say there is an abundance of substantial evidence, thanks to our city attorney and working in conjunction with the applicant's attorney, to refute any concern of public safety and the like with the location of those homes in the D zone. And so that will all be packaged up and brought to the city council on July 20th for a hearing. And kind of as these things go, there's always more than one step. The next step with the council will be what's called a notice of intent to adopt an override. So we'll have a conversation, continue with that on July 20. And if that's adopted, then there's back information to the Airport Land Use Commission, and information back to us, and then back to council. We're looking at September for that process to play itself out. Spoke with the applicant today for the SEG 217 project. That one was appealed by the Planning Commission decision also back in March. It's going to go to the council for the appeal. That's on schedule for also July 20th. That's going to be a big meeting. So we're looking forward to that. And let's see, for construction, there was a groundbreaking for the final building in Napa Junction Phase 3 over by Tractor Supply. That will be a medical building, which is very exciting, a use we really need in town, a great service, good paying jobs, stuff to like. Anyway, that has a groundbreaking that just occurred. So that's very nice. The landowner, Buzz Butler, has been working really hard to get a tenant. The building permit was approved back in September. So he's been working really hard to get a tenant for the site. And so now has one, and then they can build the building. So we're happy about that.
Has he revealed who the tenant is?
I'm not sure. There was an article in the Napa Register about it. And I don't remember if they said who the tenant was. But anyway, it's a medical user, which is great.
I think they
Yes.
did mention the name because I think they were like giving COVID vaccination shots. I think this is like their second location in the North Bay, the article said. I think I saw the same article you did.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there was a name, but I don't remember either.
Yeah. I was more concerned about the article on the Airport Land Use Commission because I was quoted.
Okay. Good. Got a monitor.
So anyway, that's my update. I did want to, if you could just indulge me for a minute or so, I wanted to just kind of go over, I've been making some notes on workshops on the general plan for the commission coming up. And I wanted to just kind of give you some highlight of some of the ones that I'm looking forward to bringing to you and having a nice discussion. We'll be having workshops on each of the general plan elements. And so some of the ones that are really kind of meaty would be the housing element. The general plan overall, we're trying to do everything as quickly as we can. But the housing element in particular has a deadline in accordance with state law, and that's end of calendar year 2022. And so that's for all the jurisdictions in the Bay Area. Regardless of whether they're doing the whole general plan, everyone in the Bay Area has to update their housing element on or before December 2022. And everyone's housing element has to go to the state for approval. So I don't want to be caught in the rush hour. So we need to back that up about 6 months so that we can get it into the state. So we're looking at that one coming up. But housing element's really important because you have to identify housing for the next 8 years, policies to help facilitate it. And so I think that's going to bring about a really good discussion. And so I'm looking forward to talking about that. Another component to a housing element is a needs analysis. And bless their heart, the Association of Bay Area Governments prepared a needs analysis for every jurisdiction in the state, or rather in the Bay Area. And so they did it for us, which is great. So excited to share that with you along with everything else. It's a very robust topic. Circulation, of course, is another one that is another robust discussion. And so I know we had council meeting on the West Side Connector. Circulation is more than that, but that's part of it. And so that's also going to be a great discussion. Economic. We do have an economic element now that's ancient. It needs to be updated. And so we'll be having a discussion of that. We have a specific consultant and part of the general plan update team that will be doing an economic study for housing and commercial and a variety of things. So that'll be a really good discussion because we'll be getting expert information provided to us to help guide us on what are our opportunities for economic development. We touched on, of course, tonight, climate and adaptation is another component to that. Kind of related to both climate and circulation is the tool called vehicle miles traveled. Forever and a day, the circulation elements, speaking to congestion, would widen roads with the idea that we want to have free-flowing traffic on all our roads. And the research has shown that if you widen roads, kind of like if you've ever been to the beach and you dug into the sand, the water fills in the sand. So roads are much the same way. When you widen them, more cars come because all the other roads are congested. And now, woohoo, we have some capacity. So called the VMT, the abbreviation for vehicle miles traveled, is the new tool that's intended to facilitate policy making that encourages reducing trips altogether, kind of like the smart growth idea I talked about with the Broadway Plan. So that's a great discussion. And then maybe backing up for a second, kind of citywide opportunities and constraints. The current general plan has a terrific list itself for the city. Some of them are still there, some are solved, but some are still there. But we have new issues as well. So, just I think from that list there's a lot we can talk about that I think will be very interesting, and I think will really help instruct and direct the general plan in a meaningful way that you can help.
Okay.
Commissioner Wong?
I love hearing this list of potential topics that are coming up. Is there like a rough timeline as to when all of this starts? I mean, I know for the housing element, you said has to be done by the end of 22, and we're going to back up 6 months. That I kind of heard a date for that one, but for everything else, any ideas when this is all going to happen?
We're doing our best. One of the aspects of the job that I have is every day can be a new thing with an exciting challenge and opportunities to learn. It does make it very refreshing and interesting, but it can get in the way of bulky projects like the general plan because there's only so many hours in a day. So my commitment self says, if I give you a date, I want to hold up to it, and it kills me if I can't. So I'm a little nervous, but I can say what I do want to do is when we have, I want to make use of our meeting schedule. And so there are some times when we're going to have development projects that'll probably gobble up all our time. And then we'll have other ones like tonight when we don't. And for those that we don't have meetings at a minimum, you know, I want to have a workshop. So I want to keep us productive. And, you know, if we get a burst of projects and we find that we just aren't finding time to have those workshops, we can have more meetings if you want to. So I do want to kind of have a pace to be able to do that. But they do take preparation, because I don't want to just throw something at you that isn't thought through, because then it wastes your time. And so I want to be able to, you know, keep things going, but I also want to be able to give you a quality workshop where we can get some meaningful input. But I'm also conscious of time.
Right.
That's very reasonable. So is the housing the first one that we'll be seeing, or where does that fit in the mix?
We're kind of working on things concurrent, although there is sort of somewhat of a logical progression to these things. If we were to look at the city, if you look at the map of the city now, and you say, gosh, if I had to wonder, you know, where do we have latitude to direct change in the future? We probably aren't looking at your neighborhoods in a way, because they're built up mostly, right? Watson Ranch, you know, it's approved, it's a specific plan, you have a development agreement. There may be some latitude there, but for the, you know, because it's not built yet. So that, you know, it has more opportunity than, you know, a built out neighborhood. The Broadway Plan, we'll be having kind of a discussion of that with the council on the 27th with regard to land uses. And so in a way, that is making some headway. I know we're all thinking about the Broadway Plan, but that is a very important part of town. And when we talk about land uses, should we refine that? That too is an important part of our general plan. That's kind of a key area. Other areas that aren't yet built, properties to the north of Eucalyptus, Oat Hill, you know, some of those that Medeiros' own, those are maybe up for question because they aren't developed. The Couches property would be another one. Some interest on part of the property owners on Highway 29 north of the railroad on the west side. Those older buildings you see there. We have some empty property that just doesn't seem to find a home with a user. And so there's been, you know, questions, you know, maybe the zoning is the wrong thing. I have some other property owners that want to make some improvements to their property, but not in a way that the zoning allows. So there's room for a conversation there about, just because nothing's happened doesn't mean that that's always a bad thing if the alternative is worse.
Mm-hmm.
You know, high achieving people probably don't think about that way, but it's an option. Maybe there's a path forward. That's a happy medium. Property owners want to invest in their property, upgrade it, improve it, and but maybe in a different manner than what the zoning contemplated. It's kind of a weird area. It's kind of a throwback that hasn't really had a lot of investment. So that's, I think, a possibility. At some point, we are contemplating annexing the Paoli and Watson Lane property. And so there is an opportunity to talk about the future of that. We also, to the east, have some property, it's called Transition Area. So that's another one where there's some great opportunity for discussion. So we got lots of areas in town that I think it would be great to think about, what looks like a sensible option. And in some of those areas, there'll be housing, and that goes into the housing element. So It's like a Sudoku puzzle.
Commissioner Wong, you still have a question?
Yeah, I just had a comment. The reason why I had asked about,
Mhm.
the timeline or which one would come first, is because we do the general plan so infrequently. I'd really like to see it well promoted. And that means giving people advance notice. And I'd also, and I definitely think for all of these meetings, they need to be in person, online, phone, all the communication options available. And particularly the one about the climate change aspect. I would even wonder if it's possible for you to do some type of workshop specifically for the students at the high school when school is in session. I'd love to see that happen. I don't know how the school would feel about it. Maybe it could be after school, or they could get extra credit as from one of the classes. And the other thing I would like to see or encourage is Jen Kansenbach, our communications person. She gave a presentation to council the other day, and she mentioned that over 50% of the households in American Canyon have limited English. So I don't know if that's been considered in our strategy for outreach as we do these updates for the general plan. So I would, maybe you can share some information with us, or maybe bring Jen on and, just to give us a better understanding.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, there's another topic too for workshop, is the outreach itself. I know that we have plans for kind of a kit to do pop-up, outreach at events and things around town. COVID kind of put obviously kibosh on that, but we're kind of getting the post-COVID situation. So that's another possibility too. But definitely translation, and maybe having multilingual staff attend some of these meetings. Back again to the school, I have been there over the years at different times, talk about planning with the students. It's always a lot of fun. So I think as we kind of wake up from the slumber of COVID, with getting out with people, that's, I think, a nice idea. Because, yeah, it's fun talking to the students. They have such great ideas. We have super students here.
They do. And, I never knew about planning as a career. So I think you definitely need to mention it, because there's a lot that happens in planning. It has impacts on so much. So,
I remember when I was in the 7th grade, and I grew up in Vancouver, Canada, and the central part of town has this waterway called Falls Creek, and it was decrepit, and there were barrel factories and sawmills, and it was right by downtown. And somebody from the city came and gave us a presentation about the complete rejuvenation of this area into parks and housing and restaurants and all these exciting things. And it really left an impression on me.
Okay.
And it all came to be too.
Yeah. That's a nice story. Commissioner Altman? You're muted.
Thank you. Playing off of the just discussed issues, and I was going to mention this in commissioner comments, but I think now is a better time, frankly. On July 7th, the chamber is doing this in the streets deal, and they're asking for different groups to have tables and whatnot. Has the planning commission or the planning department thought of doing a table? And I'm volunteering. I don't know if other planning commissioners, would be willing to, but to put some time in, sitting at a table at this event, talking to the public, and letting them know what the heck the planning department and the planning commission is and does. My guess is that if it's the city, doing a table, there wouldn't even be a charge from the chamber. And then it's just, having having people volunteering some time to, you know, sit there and be willing to talk to people.
Let's see.
Yeah, I know, Brent, you do that. I remember us at a table Labor Day,
It was 4th of July, maybe?
or 4th of July, was it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember talking about the economy and
Yeah.
pre-COVID. Mhm. So you had some prediction, not about COVID, but there was going to be something that
Mhm.
with the economy. So we've done that before. I certainly would be interested and available to volunteer and, you know, some time at a table for the community development pop-up or booth.
Yeah, July 7th might be a little soon to get material together, but I think the chamber has a series of these
Yes,
planned.
they do.
And I do agree, it's a great opportunity. So let me look and see what we can do, and I'll get the schedule too on when it happens, so it gets on the calendar.
It's whatever July 7th is. I forget what day of the week it is.
Oh,
but
okay.
It's the first whatever day of the week that is of the months over the summer through
Wednesday.
September. So it's
Okay.
the Wednesday of July,
Wednesday
August,
each month?
September, I think.
Yeah, the first Wednesday of the month. I believe it's like 5 to 7 p.m.
I think it might go to 8, but yeah.
Very good idea.
Yeah.
And if there's a way, even without a whole lot of prep, to just do something for the first one, you know, again, I'm willing to volunteer sometime and go from there.
Okay.
Maybe we could just get a sandwich board. Eric can walk around on the street that says planning, commission, ask me questions.
I like that.
There you go.
Very little prep for that.
Oh, and the name of the building, Eric, is North Bay Urgent Care. That's the medical center.
Oh, okay. Okay. Oh, good.
Oh,
Thank
so
you.
it's North Bay. Okay.
Yeah, they have one in Vacaville and one in Fairfield, I believe.
Okay.
Great.
Okay. So, I just to close this off, maybe I would suggest maybe it does seem like a time, you know, a time set, like an hour or two, to have a workshop on communication and because engagement with Jen might be something we should do over the summer. You know, maybe separate if the agenda is not too much or there's no developments, then fine. But if there's not room in the agenda to have a good quality talk about community outreach, community engagement, as well as just this technology that you know, how do we continue that? What are the, you know, the strengths and weaknesses, and when will we start having meetings back in the chamber, and how can we continue this? So that might be, I would suggest that we plan for that to be something in the near term.
Yeah. Yeah, very good idea.
So if that's it, I think that's it. Go ahead, Commissioner Wong.
So tagging off your comment, Tyrone, that's one of the things I was curious about is what is our meeting schedule? Are we still doing Zoom meetings, or how is this all unfolding, Brent? Can you give us any updates?
Well, I can say that it's being thought about, but it isn't decided yet. Quite how it'll be structured, but I know that it's being, you know, considered and information gathered. So certainly before your next meeting, we'll have answers on kind of how the reopening is occurring. So coming.
Okay, so is our next meeting the joint meeting Or do we have a planning commission meeting in
I
July
have an
as well?
You have a planning commission meeting on the 22nd, and then
Okay.
a week later, another meeting with the council,
An
Okay,
additional meeting.
a bonus
Okay.
meeting.
a bonus meeting. Okay, and so we don't know yet how those meetings are going to unfold. Okay. I will say that I know that the county, I guess they started back in May, so they've had the option of in-person or remote. They've done like dual options. I know that's been going on for their planning at least.
Well, people in charge, I'm sure, are aware. And
Mhm.
Mhm.
so we'll find out when decisions are made.
Right. And if we continue with our meeting in person, if we go with meeting on person and continue with online, then I know there's got to be extra support. I don't think Nicole can juggle all the online and us in person too, I imagine. I don't know. I know she's pretty good, but it's asking a lot. So I know that's one consideration we should be taken into the concept, because it is a good concept. And I remember thinking about, the ability to do this, but while we were in person, and if it is a resource issue, right? Just the technical support and all the administrative work behind it. So, but I wanted also just to find out about this new system for doing our agenda. So that is everybody doing that? I didn't get it. I couldn't get it set up. I need to get some stuff done to my iPad. It's kind of needs updating and stuff. And I have an issue with my email that I need to fix. But is everybody using the new system?
Yes, everybody, I can speak to that. Everybody is using the new system. So it was rolled out with the last city council meeting.
Mhm.
And generally, when we implement a system as large as an agenda management system like this, it is citywide.
Mhm. Okay.
This is the first time we're using it for planning commission. And if you guys are having any issues, please reach out to me offline. I am more than happy to assist.
Okay.
And we can get IT involved if needed as well. But some of the basic things I can probably help troubleshoot.
I'll be reaching out to you.
I'm here.
Yep. Yep. Okay.
I'm
reaching
always
out
happy
as
to
well.
help.
Okay. All right. Is there any commissioner items? Next item. Okay. I think we got it. Yes.
Oh, I think I just want to tag on to your comment, Tyrone, and thank you, Nicole, for all the extra work having the meetings online has been. I know we've had a lot of, a lot of public comments. Seems like we have had some very busy meetings lately. And so I appreciate the extra work that you've had to put in. I also appreciate that we were able to offer them online because, as someone commented, I have been trying to get more public input and posting about our meetings on social media. And I just love seeing the public participation. At the last city council meeting, they had like 20 written public comments, and they had like another 20 people speak up verbally giving public comment. And I was just blown away by, all the public participation. And I was just thinking, wow, I wish they'd all come to a planning meeting. So
Well,
We need to
just so
think
that
of
you
ways
are
to
aware-
make it more exciting.
This was noticed, and Jen has been really good about noticing this on Facebook as well. So
Mhm.
there was a reminder that went out on Facebook today as well.
Any other commissioner items? Okay, with that, I'll say that we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Awesome.
Everybody have a good night.
Good
Good night,
night.
all.